have been a controversial debate for decades now, leaving many people on one side or the other. Creationism argues that faith should take precedence over science, basing its beliefs on one book for guidance, the Bible. God created the earth and everything on it, taking 6 days. Evolutionists believe that the earth is much older than the Bible describes, and that plants, animals, and humans result from a natural progression called evolution. There were no common ancestors, Adam and Eve, from whom we came. It was a natural selection process stemming from inorganic compounds and nature. For many people in the scientific world, it is hard to take a final stance on this issue since there is evidence of evolution. But that is where faith in God and what God has done comes into effect. According to a great medieval philosopher, Moses Maimonides, conflicts between science and the Bible arise from either a lack of scientific knowledge or a defective understanding of the Bible. The beginning of the earth, along with the birth of humans, is one of the biggest and most contentious issues among creationists and evolutionists. Scientific theory holds the opinion that the universe is eternal, while the Bible states that there is a beginning. It has been proven that there was an official beginning. The question that arises is when that exact beginning took place, a time where there was neither time nor space nor matter. Christianity uses the Old Testament to describe the beginning of life. In 6 days, God created the heavens, the earth, the sun, moon, water, and animals, and ended with the finale of human beings. Other major events, such as Noah's flood, occurred along the lifespan of the earth, accounting for the distribution of fossils and the formation of the earth's layers. St. Augustine of Hippo, who was raised a Christian and later became a member of the Manichaeans, believed that the Old Testament was nonsense. He believed, therefore, that organic forms were potentially in a kind of seed form, and realized actually when the conditions were right, when the seas appeared, for instance. Augustine believed that God created everything in one move. Conception, wish, and creation were all at the same time. This thinking was also a belief held by Galileo later on in history. Evolution is defined as the development by natural causes of all organisms, those today and those yesterday, from other forms probably ultimately much simpler and originally perhaps from non-living substances. According to evolutionists, the Earth began approximately 4.5 billion years ago, with the explosion of life beginning around 55 million years ago. To evolutionists, the starting of life began as inorganic molecules that underwent a natural transformation through electricity or heat to become organic molecules. These building blocks joined to form macromolecule chains that eventually made up organisms. The chains started to replicate and feed off the pre-embryonic soup, which is the state of ponds and so forth, as the result of the first stage of evolution experiments done by Stanley Miller and Harold Urey in Chicago, 1950s, confirmed this by subjecting inorganic molecules to heat and electric shock. They were able to obtain organic amino acid compounds naturally and rapidly. Evolution finds the origins of organisms developing along a 4.5 billion year span and says that humans are a new creation. It does deny, though, that humans are the final creation, which contradicts the creationism theory where God created human beings on the last day, then resting after creation was complete. Fossil identification and geography gave evolutionists some insight as to when Earth and life began. Other ways used besides fossil identification to guide evolution include comparing anatomical features, embryological analogies, and similarities, dissimilarities. Charles Darwin was a strong believer in evolution and was the founder of the theory of natural selection. Natural selection is the theory that there is competition for survival, mates, space, food, shelter, etc., in which the favorable organisms tend to be preserved by nature and the unfavorable ones tend to die out, leading to evolution. There are two major types of evolution: macroevolution and microevolution. Macroevolution deals with changes above the species level, while microevolution is changes in gene frequencies within a population, which may lead to the formation of new species. Darwin believed natural selection occurred in nature, the need to select and breed only the best and most desirable stock. The concepts of genetics and hereditary did not come along until later, when introduced by Gregor Mendel, and later the study of evolution emerged with the discovery of DNA by Watson and Crick in 1953. The age of the Earth has been debatable, first with creationists stating that the Earth started with God, first creating the heavens and the Earth. Some scientists argue that the Earth already had the properties to sustain life, as the Bible agrees. And God said, "Let the land produce vegetation," Genesis 1:11, and later on, "Let the land produce living creatures according to their kind," 1:24. Nowhere in the Bible does it say or suggest that each species had its own creation. A view that is strongly upheld by creationists is that all living things have remained fixed over time. God created each creature the exact way that we see the organisms today. When God created the earth and everything on it, God said it was good. Creationists argue that if something arose that was not perfect in God's eyes, God had the power to destroy it, hence the reasoning for the flood. God kept the good and destroyed the bad. It is scientifically difficult to take the Bible seriously because many interpretations have been made over the decades, and most people believe that one cannot take everything within the Bible literally. For example, Genesis describes how God created evening and day, and every verse following a day of creation ends with, "And there was evening and then there was morning." But it is not until later on in Genesis that a sun and moon were created to govern the day and evening. God made two great lights, the greater light to govern the day and the lesser light to govern the night, 1:16. This example, along with countless others, points to the scientific belief that the Bible is an unreliable source, one that specific scientific information should not be taken from. The Bible does suggest one evolutionary change in a physical trait, the trait of longevity. Throughout the Bible, the lifespans at the beginning were around 900 years, and sexual maturity, ranging from 65 to 187, decreased, for it was a miracle for Sarah and Abraham to have a son, and she was only 89 years old. The trend of shortening lifespan and more rapid sexual maturity is similar to that observed in domesticated animals. This forms a basis for today's breeding and population genetics. Evolutionists state that creationists have only one source from which they are arguing, and their arguments are a way of covering up what they do not know or understand about the scientific world. This failure has come in two main ways. One, the failure to deal with the large amount of evidence that supports evolution and the fact that animals and plants are different today than in the past. And two, the failure to provide any alternative theory to natural history. The real theory of creationism is based and centered on faith in God and what God has provided. Science exists because of evidence, whereas religion exists upon faith, and in the case of fundamentalism and creationism, despite evidence. The evolutionists take a different stand on this topic of life. They believe in Earth itself had the special properties to orchestrate the beginning of life. Today, this would be referred to as self-organization with the aid of catalysts. The experiments done by Miller and Urey support the statement that the Earth was waiting for its beginning on its own time. Organic molecules, proteins, plant life, and animal life evolved along with way. Fossil evidence was discovered that showed life started immediately on a cooled Earth. Fossils show a variety of species and show species evolving into other species, intermediate or transitional species. The fact of the matter is that the fossil record not only documents evolution, but that it was the fossil record itself which forced natural scientists to abandon their idea of the fixity of species and look instead for a plausible mechanism of change, a mechanism of evolution. For example, in the western United States, scientists were able to trace the modern single-hoofed horse to a dog-sized creature, Eohippus, which ran around on its 5 toes. Also, according to animal and human development, all organisms start life in the same form, eventually specializing in their specific species. For example, the human develops similar to a reptile with a few modifications that make the human species unique. Yolk sac to fish eggs to having a tail to a 3, chambered heart, like a reptile, to a 4, chambered heart, to reptilian double jaw joint, to skin folds, gill slits, to covering of hair, to having human characteristics. One argument against fossil evidence is the idea that fossil dating could be inaccurate. Fossil dating is done using carbon-14, but for it to be of value, the amount of C14 must have always been a constant. If the intensity of radiation, specifically cosmic radiation, differed in any way, then the C14 dating system would be flawed. Scientists discovered fossils throughout the various layers of the Earth according to the period the organisms corresponded with. The bottom layers contain species associated with the beginning of the Earth, while the top layers contain more recent and advanced species, especially mammals. Evolutionists feel that these findings strongly argue for evolution. They feel that if God had created the Earth and everything on it, all fossil remains would be mixed. Creationists argue that the reason for the fossils being distributed the way they are is because of the Great Flood. Most of the time, creationists avoid this topic because of the lack of evidence they have against it. The controversy continues whether gradual evolution took place, and if it did occur, why was it not evident in fossil records? The ferocity of the battle suggests that sudden leaps in the record would imply God's direct role in evolution, while gradualism would mean randomness and no role for God. Another theory that some scientists are using to explain the beginning of the Earth is the Big Bang theory. This theory states that the universe began as an infinitely hot point of infinite density, which cooled and diffused as it exploded outward. Space, time, matter, and energy existed only after the Big Bang. The reasoning for this theory is based on our knowledge of how the universe is based on the analysis of electromagnetic radiation, providing data that shows the universe is expanding. Two astronomers, Arno Penzias and Robert Wilson, detected cosmic microwave background radiation in the ground, which is later the primeval light and heat from the Big Bang. This heat and light provide the formula for the start of life. This theory has been controversial among the scientific community as well as the religious community, but it was substantial enough to be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1978. Now, another puzzling question that is brought up among evolutionists when debating with creationists is, what about the dinosaurs? No place in the Bible talks about the dinosaur age when these huge reptilian creatures roamed the earth without human interference and then suddenly disappeared. Paleontologists and archaeologists estimate the dinosaurs to have lived around 65 million years ago during the Cretaceous period. There are several speculations for their extinction. The climate became too extreme one way or the other. The animals fed on newly evolved poisonous plants, new species evolved and ate the eggs of the dinosaurs, or an asteroid or comet fell to the Earth, destroying everything on the Earth. Recent speculation based on marine animal families over the last 250 million years argues that large-scale extinctions occur about every 26 million years. These large-scale extinctions are due to a companion star coming close to the Sun, disrupting the orbits and causing comets and asteroids to hit the Earth. According to scientists, this mass extinction is approaching, but in the creationists' eyes, this is the apocalypse. Yet, another approach to the creation of the Earth relates to how we view time. In the Bible, each day is assigned a new creation, but is time today the same as it was at the time of creation? Some scientists believe that each day of creation is related to a geological period. As one period began and developed, God added on to it, thus another day of creation. Each day or time period brings something new and different to the Earth. The days of creation could be seen by humans as a 24-hour day. It is easier for us to comprehend a day in 24 hours rather than in millions or billions of years. The Bible, in a sense, took the easier way out to describe the story of creation to us. Deep within Psalms 90, there is the truth of a physical reality. The 6 days of Genesis actually did contain the billions of years of the cosmos, even while the days remained 24-hour days. The Bible relates in the first 31 verses of Genesis the events that span around 16 billion years, from mere 100 words theologically to more than 1 million words scientifically. It is hard to evaluate the time it took for each day of creation, since we are unable to have been there or have a first-hand source. Thus, the reasoning for scientists to look more at fossils and the Earth's strata for concrete evidence. How human beings came to be on the Earth is another big topic among evolutionists and creationists. Creationists live faithfully by the belief that God made Adam from dust. In God's image, the Lord God formed the man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living person. Genesis 2:7. Eve was later made from the ribcage of Adam as a companion. Adam and Eve are the beginning of the human species race, and from them all human beings descend. Human beings were made in God's image, giving us a choice to become spiritual and moral beings. This is what separates us from any other species, for human beings have a soul guided by God. The creation of Adam could be seen differently, though, depending on how one interprets the Bible. The making of Adam relates to the body. In the Hebrew language, the word Adam is rooted in the word meaning soil. The creation of Adam refers to the human soul, the neshama. Legends and biblical scholars would say that Adam was created at the age of 20, but it could be possible for him to be made at an earlier age and lived for 19 years without a soul. He became a human being at the age of 20 when God created him with neshama. There are several verses within the Bible that teach at the age of 21 becomes divinely responsible for their own actions. Before the soul was given, there was something like a man, but not completely human. So one view could be that Adam was created at the age of 20, and before his creation, he had evolved from the primate species. When God finally saw a creature that God wanted to represent God's image, a soul was given, and Adam was created. Evolutionists have a different view of how human beings came into the world, believing that we have evolved from other species, specifically the primates. Fossil records have shown that Homo sapiens have evolved from four-legged creatures swinging through trees to two-legged creatures that walk the earth. Fossils of prehistoric humans show a remarkable resemblance to the primates, all the way from the jaw and forehead to the torso and feet. Throughout time, evolution has adapted the human species into modern-day human beings, making it possible to live in present-day times. Although it is hard to believe, we have now established that it was only 5 to 6 million years ago that we split off from the ancestral lines leading to the gorillas and chimpanzees, our closest relatives. The language developed because of adaptation as the need presented itself. Just as we have changed technology to make things easier for us, evolution has adapted us also, making it possible for us to live in today's society. It is doubtful that we could have lived in the same time that Neanderthals lived, as they would be unable to live in today's world. Creationism and evolution have two very different viewpoints on how the Earth and human beings began. Creationism is based on the belief that the Bible is a credible source, which gives the story of creation. In the span of 6 days, 24-hour days, God created the heavens and the earth, the sun, moon, stars, and all of the creatures of the earth. On the very last day, God created Adam, a human being in God's image, to rule over the earth. Creationists believe that the earth is young and that organisms are fixed. Every organism that we see today is the same organism that God created a few thousands of years ago. Adam and Eve are the beginning of the human race, and we are separated from every other species by the soul that God gave us. Creationists say that those who believe in evolution are immoral. Most frequent is the charge that evolutionists are pompous and arrogant, just the kind of people that the First Amendment was written to protect us against, and that they display an academic arrogance frequently typical of the nation's scientific educational establishment. Reconciliation does not require that every scientist becomes a believer or that every believer embrace all aspects of science. It will be complete when we accept the need to read and understand the Bible on the Bible's terms, and when scientists, having already discovered that there is a limit to knowledge, admit that science is powerless to confirm or deny a purpose for life.